Okay, it's been 10 seconds. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for the next Hot Topics session that we are holding. My name is James. I work in the marketing team. Today, I'm joined by our laser expert, Trevor, from the northwest of England. Nice to meet you, Trevor.
Hi.
And we also have Chris, who is our area manager for the northeast and Scotland. How are you, Chris?
Thanks, James. Thanks, James. Good afternoon, everybody.
Nice to have you both here. So what's this session all about? It's about the top 5 mistakes made by laser users and how you can fix them. Now, like any top list, this is going to be probably a bit subjective, so instead of letting us know where you're from when you're watching, let us know some of the mistakes you've made in the comments, and obviously we'll have a look at them and we can talk about that towards the end of the session when we have our Q&A. However, I'm going to stop talking now and I'm going to give us an overview as to what we can expect from the session and hand over to Trevor. So, Trevor, introduce our topics, please.
Thanks, James. So, the first thing I want to cover today is just easy mistakes or errors to make. So we're going to just try and isolate them in turn. A lot of them are linked, and cleanliness is going to be a bit of a theme through them. So the first one we'll have a look at, James, is obviously lens and mirror cleanliness. So what we need to be looking at doing is making sure that the lens and mirror are as clean as possible. We want to be taking that beam of light and focusing it properly so we get the required finish in terms of either cutting or engraving. If a lens or a mirror is dirty, like in the photo underneath, what we're going to get is we're going to get dust or resins sticking to the lens, and that's going to stop the beam of light either being reflected off it or through the lens properly. So we just need to make sure we're looking at keeping those because those are vital. And if I just pass you over to Chris, he can show us in a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Trevor. Just going to change my camera here. So here we are in front of our Speedy 400. This is the head arrangement of this machine. So the laser comes from the right-hand side onto the top mirror, through the lens and onto our substrate. Very easy to take the lens out of the Speedy 400. Very easy, there we go. Take that out. And the head mirror as well. We undo these 2 brass screws here. That comes off there, and we just want to give these a clean. We want to clean the lens on a daily basis, twice daily if possible. The mirror we want to check at the end of every day, as a general rule of thumb, just to make sure all them are nice and clean. Obviously, as Trevor mentioned, the cleaner they are, the more efficient the laser will work. Is that okay? Over to you, James.
Oh, absolutely. Sorry about that, Chris. Let me move slow out. Yeah, so the next topic we're going to cover, Trev, is focus, and again, quite an important topic, isn't it?
Yep, so we've got to make sure that we're getting the material at the right focal length to get the desired results, whether it be engraving or cutting. Typically, we use different lenses on different materials in terms of thickness or for details. We've got a little bit of a graphic there which shows the beam of light as it starts, as it passes through the lens, and then as it returns to its normal state. And what we can also now do is just turn to Chris. Chris can give us an example of which lens is being used in his machine and what the lenses can be used for.
Yeah, so currently I've got a 2-inch lens set up in the Speedy 400 today. I just thought I'd create a little bit of an overview here of the 3 lenses that are commonly used on this particular machine. We have 1.5-inch lens as red, 2-inch lens as black, and 2.5-inch lens as silver. What we also have here, it's quite useful that we have all the lenses are color-coded, red, black, and silver, and the focus tools are also color-coded as well, so you don't get them mixed up. One advantage of our flagship Speedy 400 is that we have the sonic autofocus at the back of the head as well. Makes focusing very, very easy and without the need for a focus tool. So there we go. So like I said, we've got all 3 lenses that I commonly use in the showroom, very easily laid out there.
And typically, which materials do you tend to use which lens on, Chris?
Generally, the 1.5-inch lens I'd use for finer detail. I would use them on such as paper card, maybe some photograph engraving, depending on what substrate we're going to use it on. The most common lens is the 2-inch lens. That's used on you know, every machine that we sell, it's the most used lens that will cut anything from 1 millimeter acrylic, 1 millimeter acrylic, all the way up to 10 millimeter acrylic, even further if needed be. Generally, though, we do use the 2.5-inch lens for anything thicker than 10 millimeter, just to give us that better finished edge. We do use a 4-inch lens every now and then for a little bit more clearance for cutting thicker foam. It does engrave okay into foam as well. We just gain that extra focal length there for maybe some thicker material, ideally foam, I would say.
But generally, your 2-inch lens is the kind of go-to solution.
It is, yes, yeah, you're right.
Excellent. That's some good advice there, because obviously, again, if you have a lot of different lenses, you might think, I'm not sure exactly which one's there. So there's the top tips from the experts, guys. Now we're going to have a bit of an actual live demonstration. And so before Trevor introduces Chris' machine, all ready to go?
It is, yes, yeah.
Fantastic. So, Trev, what are we talking about here?
So we're going to talk about power and the use of it. So as you can see from that picture, we've got 3 examples: too little power, just right, and too much. Chris is going to be using an engraving laminate, which is commonly used for label making, control panels, etc. And it's a material that has been used to replace materials that was traditionally used for rotary engravers. So I'll hand over to Chris and he'll talk us through it.
Thanks, Trevor. Most appreciated. Let me just share my screen here. We're just going to pop into job control. If I share that here. So I've got my very basic graphic set up on job control, just in the top left-hand corner to optimize the sheet material. We're going to use a Trotec Laser red white material for this test. So we're going to use a low power, just to give an example of how it engraves if we use too little power on this material. So let's press that away. So the machine's going to engrave back and forth. This material has a very thin layer on the top, about 1 micron thick, and the objective really is to engrave just enough off there to give the white in this particular case. Red white, we find, is the most, not necessarily difficult, however a little bit problematic. If we don't engrave with the right settings, we do get a little bit of pink pigmentation into our white text in this case. So this is where it can come into if we use too little power or too much power. Them things can give us that little bit of confusion. If we use the correct parameters, we get a clean finish all the time, which we'll do in a bit. This one is a low power one, so we'll just take that out when it's finished, and we'll just show you that needs a little bit of a clean up, and we haven't used enough power. So here we are. It's just going to finish there now. Just take that out. So there we go. We can see that there. Can we see that, Trev?
Yeah, I can just see a little bit of pinkiness across it.
Yeah, so I would say we need to use a little bit more power. We could clean that up with a bit of sort of substance cleaner. However, the objective really for this is to make that happen in one pass. So let's try. Sorry, Trev?
I was about to say, because ideally we'd like to be able to produce those type of products easily without having to do any cleaning or drying, etc., won't we?
Exactly, yeah. So this time I'm going to use a lot more power, the same speed. So I'm going to use 100% power, 100% speed. Just to give that representation, if we use too much, what actually happens to the substrate. Traditionally, this comes from the old engraving habits of when we rotary engrave a material. A lot of people need to engrave to a depth of maybe 1 mil, 1.5 mil, 2 mil to get that color from the material. With a laser material, it is slightly different. We just want to brisk the surface to get the right color change. So here we can see that there's a lot of dust being created. Again, if we clean this will come up, with a bit of effort, this will come up relatively white. Ideally though, like I said, we want to get that correct.
What's the thickness of the material that you're using there, Chris?
Our trolley is 1.6 millimeter.
Okay, so if you were to engrave to a depth of 1 millimeter, you're actually removing a lot of the material away, aren't you?
You are, yes. Obviously, that gets rid of a lot of rigidity of the material as well. So there we go. We've taken that off there. There's a lot of residue on there, although the depth is nice, so we could give that a wipe as so, and that does come up a little bit as well, but we still see a bit of pink pigmentation in there as well. So obviously the objective is, let's just clean that surface there. It's to achieve that with one pass correctly. So I'm just going to drag and drop that and put that underneath. Reset the job. This time I'm going to choose our correct settings. So what I've done here is I've optimized our settings. I'm going to use 45% power. I'm going to keep the speed, it's still at 100. However, I'm going to add an offset of 1.25 mil. What that does is it lowers the bed by 1.25 millimeter. That widens the beam spot a little bit, so it does bring it out of focus. Allows the material to melt a little bit more, and that gives us that crisp, clear melt of the acrylic, which gives us the whiteness of the, in this case, the troll layers. I'm also using no air assist. That stops from any sort of material being blown around the cabinet to a certain degree, and that just helps with that, with the engrave. Now that's done in the software, so we can turn the air assist on or off as we so please. The compressor's built into our machines. We can turn it on and off for an engrave and then back on for the cut. So when it does the cut, you'll see the bed raise back up 1.25 millimeter, turn on the air assist and then do the cut. So there we go. So let me just pull that out. There we go, perfectly white, straight off the machine, ready to go.
And there's no cleaning to do on that one at all?
There's not, no. I would have said not. I mean, we can wipe our finger across that, and there's no debris come off that at all.
So on all three samples, we've gone at 100% speed. That's not changed at all. However, just altering the power between the three has gave us different results.
That's correct, yes.
Definitely think it's one of the things worth talking about as well, because obviously when you see the size of the 400 there, and we're talking about if we're making a full sheet worth of all these labels, getting it just right saves you a lot more time than say the minor cleaning. It would still add to production time, so you're wanting to really hit that sweet spot to make sure that it's less effort for you guys and more profit and productivity as well.
Exactly right. That's the idea of just dialing in the settings just right. One-off pieces might be okay to clean. However, if you can imagine a full bed size and then someone having to clean them afterwards, that's got to be a bit time consuming as well.
Well, the other thing to consider is as well is sometimes if it is for like control panels, nameplates, etc., you've also engraved it and cut it with the adhesive on the back. So you want to look at keeping that as dry as possible anyway.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And I think as well, is it worth mentioning, we say we've done red and white there, we said you can get a bit pink pigmentation, but obviously Trotec is specifically developed for laser processing. What kind of other colours might you encounter an issue with, say black and white? Would you have a similar issue, or is it specifically with the red?
The red seems to bring the pink pigmentation back into the colours. Black, white, maybe a little bit as well if we get the setting right. However, I personally find that the red, white, and maybe the black, white are also we need different settings for. The rest of the colours seem to work fine.
So that's where it's again important, guys. If you hit the settings perfectly, it's how obviously again remain productive. Excellent. And so we're going on to now cover air assist, which we have slightly touched on already, but again, I'll let you guys talk us through what it is and when to use it.
So in terms of air assist, what we've got is we've got the little built-in compressor, which Chris has shown us that we can turn on and off, either manually or electronically. We tend to use air assist when we're cutting because we want it to suppress any flaming and push away any gases from the laser beam. Where we tend not to use it is on things like thick acrylic, or we'll adjust the air assist. In terms of engraving, again, we'll be selective of when we do use it, because we don't necessarily want to cool down material too much or blow debris back into where we've engraved the material away. And again, what we'll do is we'll hand over to Chris, and Chris can go into with more detail on the machine.
Thanks, Trevor. So I've just moved the head into position, so we can see on our Speedy 400 our air compressor is inbuilt, and we can software control that. So we have here an air pipe that jumps here, as we can see with a bit of blue on, into the bottom of our head and down at the bottom of our nose cone here. Great feature of our Speedy 400 is the regulator can be regulated at the back of the head, so we can turn the air assist up or down as we need it through this nozzle here. One other feature is that we have our some various different nose cones that we do use depending on application. We tend to use the wider nose cone for cutting acrylic. This stops the acrylic cooling down too quickly, and it gives us a better finish. We tend to use the smaller nose cone for any smoky applications, maybe wood, just to generate that airflow a bit more prominent onto the top of the surface of the substrate or the wood in that case.
That larger nozzle, Chris, you mentioned acrylic specifically. Are you still wanting, what are you using that for differently?
Well, we don't want to force the air down the cut of the acrylic to get that cool down, really.
So that's what's going to stop it from having the flame polished edge and make it kind of look like it's frosted at times.
It can do, yes. Yes, that's right, Trevor, you're right, yes.
And are there any other materials that you've come across where you do or you don't use air assist?
Believe it or not, on sometimes some acrylics, I found that if we turn the air assist off for engraving, that does help as well. But definitely have it on for the cut, very, very slightly, but have the wide nose cone on for the cut on acrylics. Wood, we definitely need the air assist on. We generally leave the air assist on for most applications, bar the trolleyers.
Yeah, because I know when we do things like rubber stamps, we definitely keep the air assist on just to keep all that dust and everything away from the lens and the mirror, because there's a lot of these issues that are linked to in terms of cleanliness, keeping the machine nice and clean in general, and then obviously lens and mirror as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'd turn the air assist right up for making rubber stamps. Definitely, 100%. I'll turn that right up. James, you seem to be on mute there.
I do indeed. I was typing a reply to somebody who'd commented. So sorry about that. I was going to say online you have a lot of different tips and tricks, and you can see some examples where somebody has done trolleyers, for example, or indeed rubber, and haven't used the air assist. You can see it's obviously quite messy. Or I have used it, sorry, it's blown all over the cabinet, it's blown onto the nozzle. And it is important, obviously, to know when's right to use it. And again, going back to our cleanliness slide, to regularly maintain the machine, otherwise you might end up in a bit of trouble when you're processing different materials.
Yeah, definitely, James. I mean, turn it down as well for paper and card cutting, maybe, or turn it down a little bit more than normal, just so if it's a one-off piece of paper, it just stops it blowing around the cabinet a little bit.
Absolutely. And I think are we ready to move on to our final topic, guys?
Yeah, please do.
No problem. So our final topic is extraction, and again, this kind of all ties in together. Like Trevor said, it's a flow of things that obviously all link. So tell us a bit more about extraction, Trev.
So in terms of extraction, what we're wanting to do is create negative pressure within the laser cabinet. That's going to remove any smoke, debris, dust, and fumes that can either attach themselves to your laserable product or to somewhere in your machine, for instance, like your lens and your mirror. The cleaner that we can keep the whole of your machine, the better result you're going to have anyway. And extraction is also going to be a benefit to you when working with different materials. Some machines are available with under-table extraction, so they're removing the cutting gases when you are cutting. And you can also sometimes modify your table to make it a vacuum table to pull down really thin materials. With some machines, you can also specify vacuum tables. And again, I'll hand over to Chris and he can show us around his machine so we can see how his is set up.
Thank you, Trevor. So in regards to extraction, the Speedy 400 has over-the-top extraction here at the back. We can adjust that as well by these thumb screws here and move the parts of the machine to block off part of the bed when we're not using it. So for example, in this case, I was using this side of the bed. I've got this part open and this side closed. Obviously that helps the under table extraction. And what I have here is just some pieces of rubber just to help pull that material down onto the bed. It also helps with the cut, would really help with acrylic cutting, that we can just generate that more pressure underneath that'll pull the fumes or any dirt that's been cut through. From there, one great feature of our Trotec extraction units is that we have a feature that we can turn on the extraction unit and we can variably up or down the pressure, the flow rate, just up or down keys here, depending on what we're going to use. You wouldn't need so much for a paper and card application. We'd need a lot more for acrylic. So it's very easily done there.
And you're using filtered extraction, yeah?
This in the showroom, we are using our filtered extraction, yes.
Excellent. And I think what's a good question is, I'd ask Chris, because people might know this themselves. On our website, we do say on some of our tutorials, cover the working table with a suitable material. Now you've used rubber. Is that the most efficient, or would you say it's, maybe anything suitable, but some are much better than others for achieving the optimal extraction?
You could use paper and card to block off the side of the bed, or a piece of polythene. However, the rubber that I've got here in the showroom is just cut up so we can put it into squares and rectangles just to block off each of the bed that we need it. And I can reuse it as well, and I'm not going to lose it. It's here permanently.
Excellent, that's great. And again, some people might have seen on some of the other machines, not necessarily the 400, and maybe indeed some other manufacturers, obviously they might put magnetic kind of strips across the back of the vents. Does that have this? That obviously have the same effect as, like you say, the little sliding doors where you can channel it into one area?
Yeah, can do. Yeah, you could buy some magnetic strips to put on the back if you've got overhead extraction, just to help really clear the machine. That's what we find, that if we use the extraction to its most efficient, we're keeping your machine clean. You're keeping your machine clean. It's going to keep it working more efficiently and longer, and you're going to get better quality results.
Excellent.
Well, not only that, sometimes it's also about keeping the material flat. I know I've got a couple of customers who cut obviously very thin wooden veneers with a lot of detail. So you kind of create a vacuum with under table pressure to hold them flat. You also want it to hold the cut in place because some of them are very delicate, and it just keeps everything flat for when you are using that combination of thin material, laser beam, because you're putting heat and everything in there. So it varies from application to application.
Absolutely. Right. Great advice there, Trev. So do we have anything more to say about extraction, guys, or?
I think that's about it, really. I mean, you can always, extraction's massively overlooked. From my experience, you can never have too much.
Again, great advice. So with that in mind, we now come to the end of our points and the Q&A. Now, we don't seem to have any live questions at the minute. Oh, we actually have one coming from Melanie. She says, can you please re-explain the purpose of air assist? I was distracted by fuzzy picture, so possibly an unstable connection there. So yeah, could you go over air assist quickly again?
Yeah, we can do. Yeah, so air assist is on some machines either an external air pump, or in our machines it's an internal air pump that we can turn off on and off with the software. What that does is it just blows a jet of air underneath the head, just keeps the lens clean, keeps any dust away from the bottom of our head, but it also benefits the material in some cases. We just want to blow as the cut, we just want to blow the air through the cut, just to give us that extra cleanliness. Most of the time is to keep the lens as clean as possible.
Great tip there, Chris. And I don't know if maybe it's worth, because Melanie was obviously saying about our about fuzzy picture on a screen, maybe just flip back to the camera and just maybe point to where it actually sits on the 400.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So this is our air assist pipe that comes out of the 400 on down to the head. On the left-hand side of the head, it's blown through. See, it's just underneath the lens, and it's blown down onto the substrate here. So obviously the purpose of that is to stop any dust from this point of view, if it's cutting or engraving, going back up into the lens this way on. It just keeps that nice and clean for us.
Great advice. Hopefully that helped Melanie. Thank you. Anybody else who's got a question? We've got a couple of minutes, so please drop them in the chat. Oh, nope, that's the same question there. Yeah, so anybody else who's got a question, please ask it in the chat. Going back to one of our slides now, I think it's worth just mentioning, I'm sure some people might ask the question, if we look at that lens on the bottom there, now some people might think, even if it's a, say, small little mark, oh, it's not that big an issue, I'll keep using it. It's definitely recommended that, that's not the case, isn't it, guys?
Definitely, yeah. We've got to keep them clean. We can mark glass, we can etch glass. So effectively, mirror is a glass with a coating on. With a lens, it's a coating on to let the laser through. What we don't want to do is have some debris on top of there where the laser can then interact with that, cause a bit of heat, burn away the coating, and then that lens effectively can crack or become inefficient. Inefficient to the terms of where it's frosted, and therefore the laser power isn't going to 100% go all the way through it. Therefore, you're going to get maybe a poor engrave, a poor cut. So generally, keep that as clean as possible. If you do see any marks on it, it takes very, very little time to clean. So please keep that clean.
Great advice there. To go back to air assist, sorry, Melanie's replied again. Why would you not use air assist? So let me just quickly bring the slide back up. So yeah, Trevor, if you want to take this one.
So in terms of air assist, so if you look back, if you think back to the video where Chris was using the Trolleys, when he had air assist on, you've got a lot of debris, and that debris was being pushed around by the air assist, and that can cause it to bond with the heated material that we've just passed over with the laser. So the air assist will blow it back in and possibly cool it down more than it's designed to cool down once the beam's passed over, and bond the debris back in, which is where you get discoloration. On the example where we use the right amount of power, so we barely removed any material, barely achieved any depth, literally a couple of microns, all we've done is ablated away the colour. But because the extraction is set up right, that's been vaporised and disappeared. So there's nothing that can blow back into that engraved material. That's why it looked perfectly white, and when you picked it up, you could see there was no dust on it. Whereas the other two examples, we'd either got pink in it because we'd not quite used enough power to get through that coloured layer, or we used too much power, created a lot of dust, which is then sticking to the hot, tacky surface that we've just engraved. So that's why you wouldn't use the air assist, just to get the optimum results on that type of material.
Great advice there, Trev. Thank you again for your question, Melanie. And she's actually asked another one, Chris. I don't know if you have some to hand, but what do you... Oh, we said it would help when the lights have gone off.
Did, yeah. Put them back on. So yeah, I just use some. We do some when you purchase a Speedy or any laser from ourselves. We have some industrial optical cleaner that we supply you. We do sell that as well, and then some disposable microfiber tissue for cleaning lenses, proper lens cleaner that we use. Yeah, that's what we use.
Excellent. That's great there, Chris. Thank you.
It is worth noting, if you do have any marks or debris on your lens or your mirror, sometimes you just give them a little bit of a soak and let it soak in for a little bit longer, and then carefully just keep rubbing. You can remove some of the burn marks if it's not gone too far on your lens and on your mirror.
And again, it's important to make sure you use the right amount of solution. And obviously, optics are very delicate, so you don't want to be applying too much pressure to them as well. That's a very important tip as well, especially if you're a new laser user. You might, you'll realize the fragile, just not necessarily, how fragile they can be. So don't have any more live questions, guys, but I think one question might be good for some people, Chris, is if you can go back to your little lens and focus tool setup quickly.
Of course. Yep, 2 seconds. Let's have a look for you. Yes, James?
Yes, so if we have a look here, now you've mentioned that the focus tools are all linked to the actual lenses. Say somebody, or there's multiple users on a machine, say somebody moves one of the tools but leaves, say, the white tool next to the machine when there's a black or a red lens in, be it by accident, that somebody else comes along and doesn't check. What kind of impact can that actually have if you use the wrong focus tool with the wrong lens?
All we're doing is running the substrate out of focus, so there's no impact technically to the machine. All we're going to do is have the wrong focal height, therefore it's going to be out of focus. For example, if you're doing some cutting and you're using a 2-inch lens and you've got the setting for the 2-inch lens and someone focuses it with a 2.5, there's going to be more of a focal offset, so therefore it might not cut the material as well. It'll give you a bigger cut line. So if you had tight nesting, then them cut lines are not going to be as tight. As well as for engraving as well. If you've got the engraving setting set for your 2-inch lens and you use 2.5-inch focus tool, it's just going to be out of focus a little bit.
Perfect. I think that was a cool kind of thing I wanted to cover, because obviously, again, myself, when I've used the machines when I first started, just as a focus tool, don't necessarily think maybe if you knew the kind of correlating with the actual lens. That's a great tip, guys. And well, we're up to half an hour and it doesn't look like we have any more questions come in. So a big thank you, Chris and Trevor, for the great demonstrations and the great information. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, James.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. A big thank you to everybody as well who's tuned in today. It's on a lovely sunny afternoon up in the northeast anyway. We have another webinar coming next month. Stay tuned for that. More information will be on our socials, emails, and again, websites. So keep an eye out for that. If you do have any questions that you want to put to either of the guys, you can email us at inquiries@troteclaser.co.uk. Send it. We're happy to help you with anything that maybe you didn't think about when you were watching, or anything that we did cover you want a bit more information on. So yeah, please get in touch with us. And in the meantime, this video will be going live if you want to rewatch it and catch anything you missed. But it's thank you from me, Trevor and Chris, and we'll see you in the next webinar.